this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
Friday. Kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold.
Lindsey Vonn, sensational!
The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics.
Ilya Malinin. Redefining the sport.
Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan. I'm a fan of one kind of, I guess you could say he's a niche musical artist. He's from my teen years, and there are certain songs that I particularly enjoy by, of all people, Elvis Costello. And he was just a unique artist, still is, and with a kind of an acquired taste relative to his voice. But there was one song in particular that I really enjoyed that he created, and it had to do with his grandmother. And he talked about his grandmother, kind of slipping away in age and diminishing. But that with her name, the name became a real hook for the song, as the DJ types would say. The song was called Veronica, and it always stands out in my mind. There's nothing else that sounds like it. But today, I want to talk about another Veronica. I want to talk about a Veronica who was a mother, who had children that she loved, she cared for. She had hit a rough patch in her life, but her life, after 27 years, came to a miserable end in the middle of farming country in Oklahoma. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags. Dave, you ever listen to any Elvis Costello, or is that on your playlist or not?
I have a very wide variety of music I enjoy. So yes, there is some Elvis Costello in the mix. But I was wondering how you were pulling all this together with that, and Veronica Butler being the subject today. For the most part, Joe, Kansas moms is how we started this story. If you remember, when we were covering it, they were missing. Kansas moms are missing. I'm glad you mentioned Veronica Butler having hit a rough patch. I was explaining this over the last several days to a friend of mine. Oftentimes when you have custodial issues of children, it's not just the parents that are in the mix. It's oftentimes grandparents who decide to get in and stir the pot as well. And Veronica Butler was dealing with a grandmother. Her ex's mom, the children's paternal grandmother. And Veronica Butler had turned her life around. Yes, she had gone through some rough patches. And yes, she did lose custody of her children. But she had fought her way back hard. She was, active in recovery. She was active in her church. She really had done a lot of work to get herself together to be the mom her children deserved, the mom she wanted to be. And believe it or not, that's what cost her life, because she was going to get her kids back, Joe. She was going to not have to go through visitation with somebody watching. She was going to have her children 24/7. And for most of us would look at that as a success story, something to be championed, something to share, but not in this case.
Let's play junior psychologist just for a second. Well, I think mine would be not a junior psychologist. I would be like a preschool psychologist.
Regis, I want to phone a friend.
I wonder in circumstances like this, and we might have friends out there that have gone through similar circumstances, people that are trying to get their lives back on track, and suddenly they do, and you're a new person now. I really wonder if that factors into anger because in the past, if you had, say, addiction issues, perhaps, you had issues with personal responsibility, all of a sudden, you don't you're not tethered to those people in the old manner anyway. And those people always saw your weakness as a strength for them, that kind of asymmetry, that they could control you. They could say, well, you've got addiction issues and, you don't need to be around these kids, or you can't even show up on time. How can we expect you to take care of these kids? Is there food in the fridge? Well, you place that dynamic into the situation, you really wonder if that goes to incurring the wrath of somebody that has previously controlled you. What do you think about that, Dave?
Nail on the head. Nail on the head. It's so tough, Joe. When you see somebody that has turned their life around, and again, I say many times we like to champion them, but there are always going to be people that say, well, you know what you used to do. You know who you used to be,
Yeah.
and they don't let you get past that. And that's actually what happened here. Or if we're going to be very minimalistic, that's what happened.
Yeah.
Reality is, and this, I've talked about it on here, I've shared this, but recovery from alcoholism and drug addiction it's a tough thing. Many people don't make it. But when those do, in this particular case with Veronica Butler, she turned her life around. She was a success story. And
I would think that you would need a strong core group of people to support you during this time, because you're kind of in an infant stage in development, relative to a new life. You're just trying to get your legs, and then you're dealing with these really, really intense, complex issues.
Mhm.
And it seems as though that it would, and I know I'm kind of overstating the obvious here, but it seems as though that it would be very easy for somebody that had these issues to relapse.
Oh.
And the fact that she was still, kind of forging ahead and trying to get her life online. And oh, by the way, her ex husband was in jail. He's got issues as well.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
but yet she's she's up in Kansas now. She's part of a church group, and she's got somebody it would seem, that was standing in the gap with her. And of course, we all know what happened to that poor woman.
Oh my.
In regards to this case, because we actually covered her case just a few weeks back, right? And you have to, you can't climb inside necessarily the mind of the killer or killers, is my suspicion in this case.
Oh wow.
But I can tell you what we can unpeel and unwrap here is that it's sad on one level, but it's informative. I'm here to tell you, Dave, that today we have the full autopsy now on Veronica Butler that has been issued from the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner in Oklahoma City. I think that as we continue to discuss this case, you will see what I have previously stated borne out, that Veronica died a horrible death, and that, yes, it did in fact surpass the injuries that were incurred by her friend, this woman who was with her. It was a brutal, brutal death. And I know this, that whoever perpetrated this, whoever will be named in this case as being the responsible party, I don't know if there's any way to measure the darkness in their soul.
Friday, Kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold.
Lindsey Vonn, sensational!
The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics.
Redefining the sport.
Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
I have a lot of folks that reach out to me and want me to review autopsy reports and to take a look at them and read over them, and other reports too, but primarily autopsy reports, just to, kind of give my 2 cents on the findings. I think probably the most difficult thing for most people when it comes to these postmortem big reveals, if you will, is the fact that they're very detailed. We used to say things like, well, this reads like stereo instructions. And if you're not used to reviewing them and reading them, they can be rather complex. But this autopsy report is actually very detailed. Dave, this is a 16 pager, and that gives you some indication as to how detailed this is. It seems it goes on for forever in fine detail relative to the insults that Veronica sustained, these injuries all over her body. They're not all stab wounds, but there are a plethora of them. I think that we could say that. The trauma that she sustained is horrible. And also, the other thing that really, sticks with me about this case, as it did with Jillian Kelley, I think is probably how both of these women's remains were treated. That really gives you an insight, I think, into the psyche of the individuals that were involved in this case, Dave.
A couple of quick questions. You mentioned it's 16 pages long.
Yeah.
And is that the norm? Are they normally that long, or does the 16 pages indicate just how bad it was, or is that normal? I mean, I don't know what it takes to explain a scratch on my elbow.
Yeah. Well, okay. The quick answer is it's going to be dependent upon the complexity of the case. And you could say that if you're reading an engineering schematic, are we building a tool shed in the backyard, or are we building a 20,000 square foot mansion? The complexity of what you have before you dictates the length of the report. If you have a forensic pathologist that has a detailed mind, some are more inclined to be very, very detailed, but you do have those that will just kind of run over things really, really quickly, and it demands interpretation. I think sometimes, I don't know, this is my own bias probably. I think sometimes I've come across reports that almost seemed as though the pathologist was leaving things unexplained on purpose so that they would be drawn into the descriptor, whether it be for a deposition or whether it be, sitting in court and offering up, their opinion in court. It's that's just the way my mind works.
Right.
I don't know if that's accurate or not, but it seems to be. But with this case, Dave, we're talking about a case that that involves I think 30 sharp force injuries, Dave, and they're all over the body.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, she has sustained a really, really nasty blunt force strike to her head. And that strike in and of itself is brutal, because it's what we refer to, Dave, as a full thickness laceration, which means you can have, like on the scalp, you can have kind of a tear in the scalp that comes about from blunt force. But when you get a full thickness, this doesn't just break the skin. This goes all the way through every single layer of the scalp down to the skull, so that the skull would actually, bear evidence of hemorrhage, on it, where you've got blood that is all over the surface of the skull, and it's communicating with the overlying laceration.
Wow.
And in this case, that's what she had. And here's a very interesting descriptor that they give to this strike, Dave. The forensic pathologist, she actually describes this laceration as chevron shaped. And for those that don't know what a chevron is, if you think of sergeant stripes in the Army or in the Marine Corps, where you have, the chevron looks like a mosquito wing.
Right.
Essentially, that's what they're referred to as. If you're private, you get that first stripe. It's a mosquito wing, and it has that point at the top and kind of slides down on both sides. Dave, to me, if you've got that definitive kind of mark like that, I'm really wondering if there was any way that they could tell that there was a particular instrument that was used here.
Wow.
Because, you have to think about, well, what would create a very specific injury like this, a chevron shape. And if you think about, say, the leading edge of any kind of squared off object, perhaps I've seen chevron shapes with a brick. I've seen chevron shapes actually with a piece of angle iron. That goes to that makes kind of sense. I've seen chevron shapes that are associated with pistol whippings as well.
Wow.
Because if you think about the shape of a semi-automatic pistol,
mm-hmm.
If you look at the end of the barrel where the slide is, and the sight, the end, that sight at the end, the hard sight, the iron sight that's at the end, the shape of the barrel, it forms, it kind of forms this 90-degree angle like that. And so you can generate a chevron shape from that. So, and look, again, it might not necessarily be anything specific like that, but the Dr. Cobb, went into detail describing that this was a chevron shaped laceration. And another feature that we look for in lacerations, and I always love to point this out, particularly to people that work in the medical field, they'll call cuts many times, cuts with sharp force injuries, they'll call them lacerations. And those are not lacerations, those are incised wounds. Lacerations are generated from blunt force trauma. And in here, Dr. Cobb talks about tissue bridging. So tissue bridging means that you've got this item that has pounded on the skin and has literally torn the skin. So you've got these little fine fibers that are still connecting, the both sides of the injury. And there was no associated underlying fracture of the skull, but it was this blow was strong enough to generate this chevron shaped laceration. If this had been done with a knife, for instance, or an axe, okay, you wouldn't have tissue bridging, okay, because you've got that milled edge that cuts through tissue, and it makes those margins nice and even. And here she was struck in the head. Other thing, again, just like we had with Jillian, I don't know if you remember this, my friend, but do you recall there was a unique injury that was found in Jillian's case? And again, we have with Veronica, we have also what the ME is calling burns from, or a burn from what appears to be a stun gun.
I found it shocking in reading the autopsy report that, well, I'm going to back up a minute. You mentioned the taser, and I'm thinking about the battle that went on. This autopsy report describes a battle, a fight for life and death. And Veronica Butler is outnumbered. And I was trying to, in knowing that we had done Jillian Kelley before, and in my mind's eye, we're looking at 4 people attacking these 2 women. And I'm trying to think of who was taken out of commission first. They weren't piling on both. There wasn't a dual fight going on like in the movies. I don't think. It seems to me they were able to hold one steady or incapacitated in some way while the other was killed. That was my thought process. But now that I'm reading this, and I was shocked at the number of defensive wounds.
Yeah. Can I say something about that real
Please.
quick? Yeah. This opens up my mind as an investigator to begin to think that she may have been taunted. She may have been taunted that they're coming around her like a pack of ravenous wolves at this point in time. And remember, if we go back to what we were saying earlier, or what I was saying, playing, elementary psychologist, there's a lot of anger involved here. And you can kind of game this out in your mind where you're thinking, okay, so this individual that has decided to perpetrate this, if it is the accused, and again, this case has not gone to trial, so nobody has been tried. We've got individuals that have been charged, but nobody has been tried and found guilty. But if this was an event where you've got her on the receiving end of all of this anger, all of this hatred, there may have been a kind of this precursor to the fatal attack, because we've got injuries that are consistent with her defending herself, where she's lifting her arms, her hands. We've got these, what they're detailing out as defensive style injuries, and that, and you can begin to learn a lot about the I don't know, the dynamic of an event, because there's 6 defensive style injuries, Dave, that we've got them to the 2nd and the 5th fingers on Veronica's hand, and these are all again on the right hand with the 6, and she's got a superficial, what they're calling a superficial defensive type wound on the left proximal forearm, which is going to be closer to the proximal, means closer to. So when you say if it was on the left wrist, that would be distal. If you talk about proximal, left proximal, that means you're getting closer to the elbow. So she's blocking with her left arm, and she's grabbing the knife with her right. Do you see how just gruesome this is at this point in time? And she's even got a single defensive style wound to her left palm. So at some point in time, that knife that was used was drugged through her palm. She's got several of these kind of superficial incised wounds, even stuff on like the inner portion of her thighs, the left thigh in particular. So there's a huge dynamic going on here. This is this knife being used over and over and over again.
Right.
Where she is trying, she knows that these people at this point in time are here to end her life. I think one of the things that's fascinating to me, kind of going back to the these not taser, but stun gun injuries. Right. How did you can never tell sequence about these things, and it's a fool's errand if you try to. It truly is, and I really wonder about the sequencing of these stun gun injuries as compared to the chevron strike injury that she has on her scalp, and also these defensive injuries. Did they stun her when she was in the vehicle, or did they stun her once she got out? Because the stun gun injuries that Veronica has on her body, they're referring to them or it as the upper back, lower neck. So that means that if you're the perpetrator, unless you wrapped your arms around her from the front and stunned her that way, this is being initiated by somebody being at your posterior and extending their arm, or maybe grabbing you by your forehead and jamming this thing into the back of and buzzing you with it, and it knocks them down to the ground. But if you're incapacitated as a result of a stun gun, have you ever seen anybody hit with a stun gun before, Dave? Yeah, I have, and I've seen tasers too. And there's all the taser videos that are online, about cops going through training, the military going through training. And you are, in fact, incapacitated. Now, some people, as we see in some of these remarkable videos, they get hit with a taser and it doesn't faze them. I mean, they just keep on keeping on. But for most people, you're going to go into this kind of tense rigidity where you fall to the ground, and it takes you a minute or two to clear your head. So we have to think that the taser wounds would not have come at the same time the defensive wounds would have come out. So the sequence there, you really begin to wonder about the sequence of these insults. If she's popped with that taser, or forgive me, with the stun gun, that would be posterior. Now, I don't know if she just collapsed into a pool, inside of the truck, outside of the truck, or if she fell forward. You would think falling forward would be the most logical thing, since she's popped on the back of the neck. And then she's stabbed, but does she have an awareness of the stab wounds that she's having? She turns around or rolls over finally and starts grabbing the knife. Or is she erect when this is going? Did she get back? Because they've got to move them around, to this grave that has been dug. Either way, I know this. By my count, I don't know in recent memory if we have covered a case with so many injuries as were sustained by Veronica Butler. But when you take this and you begin to think about the totality of injuries here, and the fact that this happened to two women approximating the same location on the same day, who wind up being in the same grave, you know that there is more than one person that had a hand in this.
Friday. Kick off the Winter Olympics in style with the opening ceremony from Italy, featuring a special performance by Mariah Carey. Celebrate the greatest athletes from around the globe as they come together to go for gold.
Lindsey Vonn, sensational!
The opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics.
Redefining the sport.
Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
If most of us will just view an autopsy report as a roadmap. It will give you a lot of insight into both maybe life that had been lived, the moments of death, and then I think probably what happened to that individual after they were deceased. And that's no different here in Veronica Butler's case, Dave. But the thing about it is that uh, this roadmap, so-called roadmap, is really like a Rand McNally map book.
Wow.
It's so detailed.
Wow.
There's a blast from the past.
Go ahead and Google it, friends. If you're under 35, you have no idea what that is.
It is so very detailed,
right?
Relative to all of the data that is contained herein before us, Dave.
I was looking at the report of autopsy that starts with the means, and it's titled "Assault with Knife." So they start right there, and at the very beginning, they've got multiple sharp force trauma with a total of 30 sharp force injuries. And then below that heading, A, sharp force injuries to the head and neck. B, sharp force injuries to the torso. C, sharp force injuries to the extremities. In this balance of figuring out exactly what happened scientifically, do you also take into account which of these strikes, blows, cuts, what it could have been fatal? Is that part of the discussion early?
Yeah. That's excellent. Because if you look at this, most of the time, you're going to start off in these findings almost like a death certificate, where if anyone has ever read a death certificate, and there's generally 3 lines on the death certificate, and it will read, the cause of death, and then you've got contributing factors that kind of go down the line. When you see these contributing factors, they go to an overall narrative, but what they're going to start off with are these things that would have led to death. And it's like what's the old what's the old saying, or the old Shakespeare, death by 1,000 cuts.
Oh, right.
It's not quick, and some of these things are superficial, and some of them are deep. I mean, for instance, she's got multiple, and they're calling these incised, Dave. Okay. These are not stab wounds. Just to start off, the sharp force injuries in the subheadings, you've got 4 incised wounds, including 1 deep to the top and the back of the head. So when we say incise, that's a cut. Well, that cut, again, like the laceration that we mentioned earlier, this is a full thickness cut, Dave. This is full thickness with a knife. So just imagine, if you will, taking the sharp edge of a knife and dragging it across the scalp of somebody and cutting not just superficially, but all the way down to the bone. It's got another, deep incised wound that goes. Now, this is nuts to me. She's got a deep incised wound to the lower central forehead. Yeah, why would you need that? And then there's an underlying frontal skull fracture there. How do you achieve that? And again, horrible stuff. But I think probably what led to her death specifically, she's got a stab wound to the left posterior lateral upper neck. So if you take your left hand and essentially put it beneath your earlobe, this is going to be approximating the injury right there. That's a stab wound, and this actually hits the left internal jugular vein, and also it goes into the oral floor, Just think about
What is that exactly,
The
Joe? I
oral
have no
floor
clue.
is where the attachment of the tongue. That's how deep this thing goes. All right, so you're clipping all these little vessels that are in there. She's got another incised wound. The upper lateral neck on the left side, which implies to me that somebody's trying to cut her throat. She's got 2 stab wounds to the lower right anterior lateral and lateral neck. So if you put your hand on the right aspect of your neck, these go. This is very deep, Dave. These go now. Anterior lateral means like forward, and anterior forward and lateral. So it involves both aspects. The right aspect of the neck, the anterior portion, and lateral. And Dave, this goes all the way down. It clips the jugular vein on that side of the neck, and also goes all the way down to the C5 vertebra.
Oh,
and
my
clips her
word.
spinal nerve at that point in time. So you've got these really, really deep wounds that would have required a tremendous amount of force. And then on top of this, you've got all of these defensive injuries that she sustained. So in total, we're looking at this, this poor woman sustained over 30 sharp force injuries. And sharp force means that she's got stab wounds and incised wounds, 2 different things. And then she's got this really nasty blunt force trauma to the back of her head. And she's been popped with a stun gun in addition to this. And I hope that people understand now the level of brutality. You combine this with Jillian, and something that we talked about last time was that relative to Jillian, I really wondered, and this goes along with taunting, I really wonder if they killed Jillian in front of Veronica. Because remember,
wow.
Jillian was in the bottom, okay?
Right.
And Veronica was found on top of her inside of this container. And, that's enough to chill you right there, that she was made to watch this event. That took place in front of her, and maybe the police will have more information relative to that. I don't know, brother. It's certainly, it paints a horrible picture, though.
Well, there was the as you mentioned, you've got the sharp force trauma, the 30. Again, think about 30 stab wounds. 30, that's a lot, Joe. That's a lot of stab wounds, and.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the pack of wolves circling. She gets hit on the back of the head. And I was thinking that, when you talked about the scalp in the front, I was wondering if she got hit in the head and that caused her forehead to hit something that caused this. But based on
what they're calling it.
No, it was just so much different.
Yeah. And that location, to me, again, it's interesting because you would think that she's got an underlying fracture,
right,
relative to what they're calling an incised wound. I don't know. I don't know how you would achieve a fracture, an underlying fracture of an incised wound. Now, the incised wound is very deep, and just to give our friends an idea where this is a disfigurement, Dave.
Okay.
If you go to your eyebrows, okay, and essentially move up probably about an inch, that would approximate the location of this full thickness incised wound that she's got across her forehead. To me, you don't normally see incised wounds to a scalp like this, where people, you've got this other one on the back side of the head. And also, by the way, that injury on the back, that other deep incised wound, it actually communicates, or the hemorrhage communicates, according to what the autopsy report says, the hemorrhage from that incised injury communicates with the hemorrhage generated from that blunt force trauma. So both of those injuries occurred in life. She had sustained these. This is the stuff of nightmares. This is an attempt to disfigure this poor woman.
While she's alive, scalping her while she's alive.
Yeah, and I won't necessarily say scalping.
Oh, yeah.
But it involves the full thickness of the scalp, and you've got these injuries that are involving, the head. It's very curious to me what the purpose was for this, and these are people that are allegedly very well equipped with. They have the means to have a disabled cooler. They have a skid steer. They have the ability to dig a hole. Why in the name of the sweet Lord are you going to show up with knives?
Yeah.
You have to think that they had firearms. Do you see what I'm saying here?
Yeah.
It's one thing if you, as horrible as it is to find somebody that has been executed with a gunshot wound in the head, this goes beyond that. And you're telling me that out of, not you, the universal you're telling me that out of all of these people that are involved in this confederacy here, that no one among them had a firearm in order to facilitate the death, a merciful death, compared to what we see played out here. It's mind-boggling.
And we know they did have a gun because we found, parts of it. We found, it might have been Veronica Butler's gun. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know, but why not have the utility to use it? If it does belong to the alleged perpetrators, why doesn't do you have no mercy left in your soul?
Total torture.
None whatsoever. Because that, we're really absent here of that level of humanity, it would seem, Dave.
Well, let me ask you, though, there was something else on the autopsy that it just struck me as odd, because we've got the description of these horrible injuries done to this woman, this mother, and we've got the possible stun gun marks in the lower neck and upper back. The bodies already are in what is referred to as moderate putrejactive. I don't know how you pronounce putrejactive. Is that what it is?
Putrefactive.
Putrefactive. Okay.
Yeah, putrefactive.
It's decomposition.
Yeah.
So the bodies are decomposing together.
Yes. Yeah.
And
so much so that they took the gloves off the hands. The hands were degloving, which means that they were able to peel that top layer, and they submitted that to the state. Yeah, so they were decomposing.
Degloving is that top layer of skin?
Yes. Yeah.
But why would they have to include an actual bullet point here, number 5?
Right.
Obesity. Why?
Yeah.
That's listed on Veronica Butler's here. You start off with multiple sharp force trauma with a total of 30 sharp force injuries, and number 5, obesity.
Yeah, I don't understand that. Generally, it's not uncommon to see obesity listed in an autopsy report, but it's generally just so folks, I'm kind of painting a word picture here. The autopsy report, when you read it, has these. It's essentially a list. It's a bulleted list with Roman numerals with subsections and such as that the data for the injuries is coming from. However, as that final bullet is placed in there, it says obesity. Generally, you'll see a mention of obesity in the external examination where they'll say, today we received the body of, I don't know, let's just pull of John Smith, white male. He's moderately obese, morbidly obese. And that's kind of in a general descriptor. This is literally added in the area that would be considered a contributing factor to her death. And I don't understand the rationale for that. I think that this is something that perhaps might be that she would have to explain on the stand when this thing finally goes to trial, because you kind of bury the lead here. You're going through these horrific injuries, and oh, by the way, she's obese. I don't understand how that plays into it. I can understand it as a descriptor, all right,
Right.
in a narrative description, but it just doesn't make sense. And this thing is so detailed, this autopsy report. Other than that little point, I think that's really the only thing that that really stands out to me that's kind of odd.
It did.
The autopsy report itself is markedly detailed, which is fantastic because in the last few years, I've come across many that have little or nothing. I think I covered one case on the air, and I don't know which case it was. I do so many. That doesn't mean that I'm great. It just means that I'm dumb enough to keep doing them. And, and I was going to go on some news program, and I remember they sent me the autopsy report, Dave, and it was a multiple gunshot wound where we had gunshots all over the body. And I looked at the report, and the report was like 4 pages in length. And
Right.
one of those pages was the title page. And it had nothing really, a lot of detail relative to range of fire or trajectories. In this case, though, this took some time, and they did both of these cases, both Jillian's and Veronica's, the same day. This would have been, just to give you guys an idea of the involvement in something like this. This is something that you would have been in that autopsy suite all day long, and there would have been no pulling back from this. It would have been a long, arduous, exhausting day for the entire staff because there's a lot of detail, and plus you've got the added factor of decomposition, and that in and of itself obscures many things at autopsy. That's why you have to be very careful and take your time. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.